today's episode, we're going to go through the Minnesota Vikings, and we have Luke Braun here from the On Vikings podcast. Luke has been podcasting about the Vikings for quite some time. You guys should go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, go check him out. He's got some great content with some other co-hosts. Luke, do you want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. You can find the Locked On Vikings podcast. It's a Monday through Friday daily show, half hour every morning. You can find it wherever you listen to your favorite shows, as well as YouTube and even Amazon Fire and Roku, if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. I've been doing that this will be my sixth season of that. This is my sixth draft. So having a little fun doing that. And then occasionally I'll puke out an article for the Wide Left Substack, which is Arif Hassan's Substack. And you'll find me bouncing around other places. Locked On the NFL I do on Tuesdays. But mostly I cover the Vikings.
Very cool. So I guess before we get started, not exactly Viking news, but I wanted to talk to you about a trade involving one of your former players. So
the Diggs trade, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of involved one of your picks, so I think it's worth hitting really on before. So I think this morning Buffalo sent over Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans for the Vikings 2025 second round pick that they acquired in a trade earlier this offseason. And in return, the Texans obviously get a veteran wide receiver there, and the Bills get left with like a $31 million dead cap hit for Diggs. So, Luke, how'd you feel about that trade? Do you think that was the right move for Buffalo, and do you think both teams win, or do you see it lopsided one way or another?
So it doesn't particularly sound like the Bills had a choice. I don't know if this is something that you can really engage with on the, were they correct to sell on their player? Did they get the value? I don't think that there was a world where Stephon Diggs stayed there. And I think the biggest signal you have toward that is the price, because if you just look at the difference between the first Diggs trade where the Vikings traded him off to Buffalo, Vikings get a first round pick. They got, I think it was 22 that year, maybe it was 23, turned into Justin Jefferson and more. And they got 3 other picks in day 3, which, that's obviously the first round pick is the headline, but that's not, that is super different from a second rounder next year. It's not even this year's second rounder. They got to wait a whole year to get it. So to me, that plus the fact that they had signed this contract extension when they traded for Stephon Diggs that hadn't even really kicked in yet, leaving this huge dead cap hit, and that they didn't even do it post-June, which they could have waited, right? If this was a value play, right? If this was we are going to trade Stephon Diggs, but we want to make sure we just think it's worth it. We think the second round pick is worth it, right? You could have waited until the summer and done that and split up that dead cap hit. Some of it would have hit this year, some of it would have hit next year. But no, they're taking it all at once because he had to go. And that tells me that this is not something that Brandon Beane thinks is – I don't think this is his preferred situation, maybe is the way to put it. That said, great for the Texans. When somebody else is falling out, and you get to get better because of it, good for you. It's clear the Texans are trying to maximize that rookie contract, CJ Stroud on a cheap contract. And now for them, I think it's Super Bowl or bust, which is what you want to be saying at this time of year.
So do you think that Diggs, obviously he's probably the best receiver that steps on the field for the Texans? I really like Tank Dell, but he is on the younger side. He's going to need some time to, really get it together. I think he has the most potential there, but do you think he could potentially do more harm than good, even though he's really talented, obviously on the downside of his career, but at times it seems like he might, he kind of has he doesn't seem like a veteran leader you would anticipate from someone of his stature.
I've only shaken the guy's hand once, so I will refrain from trying to make a character judgment on a guy I've met once and how he will mesh with a guy I've never met in CJ Stroud. Yeah. I'll just let that play out. But what I can say, at least, is on the field is this guy can be wide receiver 1, right? And as much as they got out of Nico Collins and Tank Dell last year, being able to run your offense such that they don't have to be the focal points anymore, things can really explode. And hey, look, this is a fantasy podcast, right? So we can talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah.
That might not mean that Tank Dell or Nico Collins are as good of fantasy assets as they used to be, and Stephon Diggs might not be as good of a fantasy asset as he used to be. But the fact that they take some market share away from each other and ease the burden on each other will help them be more efficient, which is phenomenal for the Texans. But yeah, that might not be so great for owners if you're like a dynasty owner, that might ruin their ADP or whatever. If you're doing redraft, that's not an issue that anybody in the actual Texans organization needs to care about. But maybe if that's something that you're worried about, it's worth keeping an eye on exactly how that market share plays out. And especially with Diggs, because what's he, 30, 31?
Yeah,
he might not
31,
be. Yeah, he might not be the guy that leads the league in targets anymore, like he was with the Bills. You might not want to do that with him. Maybe split things up a little bit. But I think that the skill sets are complementary. Diggs' skill set complements everybody, because there isn't like a thing Diggs can't do. And having that all around, he can do everything kind of guy allows your more specialized dudes like Tank Dell to just do the stuff that they're good at. And that is really what you always want to be asking is, can you only do the stuff? Like, can we find a way where the offense only asks you to do what you are best at? And I think the Texans found a way to get there.
Yeah, I think the clear winner, just from a fantasy perspective, and I'll leave it with this, is Dalton Kincaid, because now like that huge, like obviously Diggs was sucking up a lot of targets, right? Gabe Davis out the door. He's like the best pass catcher they have left on that roster, so I think he's due for a nice year too. But remains to be seen. They still have the draft to address that position too.
The real winner we'll find out in April, in late April.
Yeah.
Who the real winner of that is.
Let's shift to the real. Let's go to real Vikings news. So that was your former player, involved your pick, obviously, indirectly. But so the win totals came out on FanDuel and DraftKings, and I saw that Minnesota was at 6.5 wins on the season, which doesn't come as a huge shock to me, given that Kirk Cousins is out the door. You guys have Sam Darnold. That was the biggest move. Now, how do you feel about that compared to the other teams that, are quarterback needy? Like if you look at like the Commanders, Patriots, or whatever, I noticed that their win totals were lower. They were, I think, like 4.5, 5.5. But Vikings at 6.5 with no real answer at QB yet. That was kind of interesting to me.
It's a lot of unknowns, right? And I think if you wanted to really play it spicy, and I don't think that this is good gambling strategy, but if you wanted to be the kind of person that plays it spicy, where you could kind of say, okay, I'll bet on the Vikings to get their QB situation figured out. I'll take that over and assume that over goes up later. So if I want to take the over on the Vikings, it's probably the best time to take it. Because right now the betting market doesn't know who the quarterback is going to be. And there is a genuine contingent around the nation of people who don't even think that the Vikings are going to take a quarterback. Like, they haven't even thought about it that hard. They're like, oh, they're going to be a Sam Darnold team. Oh, this is a dead year for them. They'll be 3-win team. And like, that's the only thought they've ever had on the Vikings. Some of those people even go on TV. It's kind of crazy. But if you're asking me, they're going to get a quarterback. It's going to be someone, whether it's Drake May or JJ McCarthy or even like Jaden Daniels. It's going to be someone. I don't necessarily think it's going to be somebody like Michael Penix or Bo Nix. It doesn't seem like the Vikings are too high on those guys. But that said, hey, the Vikings did have their private workouts with those guys. So maybe they're just holding their cards close to the chest. What do I know, right? I'm just an outsider.
Yeah, they're doing their due diligence on everyone, right?
Right. And they're going to keep their real opinions on that maybe a little bit closer. But from everything I understand, and this is a lot of this is public, some of this is from private conversations, but I think I'm on safe ground to say they really, really, really like Drake May. They really like JJ McCarthy. And I think if they end up with either of those two guys, they will be able to walk away from the draft feeling pretty good. And I think if you end up with one of those two guys, I don't think that they stay at 6.5. You've got somebody that you can feel at least good about. JJ McCarthy, maybe, because his reputation around the league is like kind of tainted by Michigan. And it's just, everyone's really annoyed at Michigan, and therefore they're annoyed at JJ McCarthy, like kind of cringe. So like, I don't know, people don't like him. And I don't think the betting market will believe in him, but if they end up with Drake May, I would expect that to go up.
That's interesting to me. So what I found really fascinating yesterday, I think there was something circulating on Twitter. So contrary to what you said, I've been seeing a lot of chatter that Vikings are going to trade up to either 3 or 4, take JJ, take Drake May. Those are the two names that have been really associated with the Vikings. But I think yesterday, it might have been Dove Kleinman sent out a tweet.
Oh, you can't do Dove, man. Don't do Dove.
Yeah,
Don't get your news from him, man. He's an aggregator.
Hey, he's one of the mainstream guys, and he said that you guys are content going in with Sam Darnold. No,
he's wrong always. He's wrong all the time, and you should unfollow and block him. I'm serious. He's one of these like Twitter aggregator accounts. Okay. They aren't interested in informing you. You have to understand. They are born of Twitter being able to monetize the blue check thing, monetize engagements, right? This is a natural thing that's going to crop up if engagements get monetized. If you're interested in getting the correct information, you got to go to original sources. And Dov does not originally report. He aggregates other people's reports, and then he will frame them in the way that gets the most engagements. So if you look at the actual report that he was quoting there, which was from Kevin Seifert was not reporting there. He wasn't saying, my sources tell me they actually maybe will stay at 11. He was opining. He was saying, hey, this is a possibility. We don't know anything right now. There's all this uncertainty around everything. And they're not fully guaranteed to trade up, which of course they're not. They haven't done it yet, right? Like, of course, like things could fall through, anything can happen. And that's really all he was saying. But those accounts that's not going to farm as much engagement. So those Twitter accounts are going to tell you something wrong. So my advice to you and to all of your listeners is to take those accounts, the JPA footballs, the ML footballs, the NFL notifies, unfollow, block. They're not even like wrong in a funny way, where sometimes it's fun to follow those accounts that say really dumb stuff and you can laugh at them. They're just going to lead you down a path to get you riled up about something that turns out untrue that you then have to backtrack.
All right.
I've been around the block enough to know
take everything,
that's no fun.
Anything that comes from those accounts, take it with a grain of salt. I almost feel bad for not going all the way through seeing Seifert's original article. So I'm glad you pointed that out, called the distinction, because literally that was the first report all offseason that said anything other than Vikings are not going to trade up. So that was really strange.
And those accounts will lead you wrong all the time. The way to engage with them, if you must continue to follow them, which I don't even know why anybody feels like they need to, just follow the reporters. Like, it's Twitter. You have a timeline. You're gonna see all the news, I promise. But if you must, they will usually cite where they got that report, click through to that account, find the original report, and at least see what that person actually has to say. Because especially when they're reporting, when it's somebody like Seifert, like Ben Gessling at the Star Tribune, like the Pioneer Press, they will be very careful with their wording, and aggregators will not be, and they will sort of betray the care and the editing that is put into actual reporting. Those guys work too hard for you to go take some grifter's word for it.
Makes sense. Okay. Let's continue on. And we're gonna, later on in this podcast, I'm gonna put the GM hat on you, because I'm curious on who you want out of all those guys. So let's save that for then, because I think that's gonna be interesting. But it sounds like if the Vikings don't draft one of those top guys, if they don't take a quarterback in the first round, it doesn't sound like you're going to be thrilled with Sam Darnold back there.
No, I don't think anybody in the building in Minnesota is either. I don't think that it's very clear what he's been brought in for. I'm sure he understands what he's been brought in for. He is not here to be the future of the Vikings. The Vikings don't have the hottest, spiciest Sam Darnold take in the world you've ever heard. They're not going to come out on the podium and say, we think we can win a Super Bowl with Sam Darnold. No, he's a bridge quarterback. We all know what he's here for.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the key things there is I think you guys only signed him to a 1-year deal. Like if that was any intention of him, like even competing with the rookie, I think it would have been, like a 2 or 3 year deal. So that's
and he's making running back money. Like, this is not a serious, the signs are out there. Nobody has any qualms. The idea of a bridge quarterback is, look, when let's say, you are like, look at the Texans, for example, right? And they have CJ Stroud, rookie year CJ Stroud. That was a real run that they made. They didn't win, but they You walked into that Texans Ravens game going, yeah, the Texans are underdogs, but I could see them doing it, right? Like that was a run. They really actually made something out of that season. And that's what you want with your rookie contract, right? You only get, when you draft a quarterback, if he's good, you get 3 cheap years. His rookie year, his second year, his third year. By his fourth year, if you're drafting that guy in the top 5, that guy's cap hit's going to be an 8-digit number. So he's already starting to get on. And then the 5th-year option is the average of the top 10 QB contracts. Now he's just making real money and you're extending him and you're going through the whole thing. So you get 3 years where you get that huge advantage of good QB play without having to pay for good QB play. So you got to maximize that. And in the event that you draft a QB and he's a 21-year-old, right? Getting used to the NFL. It takes a month or two for him to get used to the new playbook and the speed of things and just the number of the game. You don't want to be 1-8 when that guy's ready to take over. It's just be 500 when that guy's ready to take over. Let's see if we can make a run at this, right? And it was great for the Texans with somebody like Stroud who was ready day one. But in the event that they are not ready day one, shoot, look at Lamar Jackson's rookie year, right? Mm-hmm. He wasn't ready day one, but they managed to make a run out of that year. And they didn't win in the playoffs, but you looked at that going, okay, these guys are as much a contender as anybody in the rookie year. So they actually managed to make something out of that in 2018. And that's what the bridge quarterback is for.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it with Alex Smith and Mahomes, right? Like Mahomes sat
for sure
the first year. And I think there were some issues with him coming out of college. Like he had some issues to clean up. And because he had a veteran like Alex Smith there, it helped him. I think that's what really propelled him in 2018, in my opinion. That's what really helped Mahomes like hit the ground running compared to someone like Josh Allen, who, his first NFL starts.
Took 2 or 3 years for him to really get going. He needed Diggs.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys made them pay a heavy price for him too. So I'm curious for this. So obviously Vikings win totals at 6.5, but it seems like everybody else in your division, even the Chicago Bears, their future, they're spending a lot of money. They got a lot of receivers. They're going to draft Caleb Williams. Obviously, the Lions were literally like one good cornerback away from making the Super Bowl, in my opinion. The Packers are right there with them, too, with the surprising playoff run. Out of those 3 teams, I guess, who do you fear the most? Because it seems like all of them have pretty bright futures ahead of them.
I think going into the division this year, it's probably the Lions are going to be the heavy favorites again, with probably the Packers as the sneaky dark horse. And just looking at spending, the Bears are not the team for me. And they are, the Vikings did spend more in free agency than the Bears did. At least they have so far. And that's not counting some of the extensions too. So in terms of who spent money, the Vikings went a little harder than the Bears did, which is kind of weird to me because the Bears seemed to have more space going in, but Ryan Poles, I think, is afraid to compete. I don't respect the Bears.
I have a follow-up question for you on that, but continue.
But yeah, the Lions seem to be the team, right? And we'll see if they can put that same magic together. They seem to be pretty aware that hey, it's fleeting, right? You don't just get to a bunch of NFC championship games by sleepwalking, right? It's really difficult to do. And now 15 teams are coming for them in that conference, and 15 teams are coming for you too. That's how it goes. This is competitive. But I think when it comes to who's in the division, it really only breaks you if it's Mahomes or Brady. But Tom Brady broke the AFC East. The Dolphins, the Jets, the Bills, they cycled through decent coaches. They cycled through good quarterbacks because they couldn't get past Tom Brady. And the same thing is going to start happening in the AFC West. Just you watch. The Chargers, the Raiders, the Broncos will grind themselves into dust. They will fire good coaches because eventually Sean Payton will have gone 5 years without winning the division, right? The Chiefs keep winning it.
Fair point.
So in that longitudinal view, that's going to happen in the AFC West. I don't really see any of these NFC North teams having that kind of stranglehold. But hey, going into this year, there's a reason that those teams are favored and the Vikings aren't. They're in a good spot, yeah.
That's a good point. So all 3 of those teams don't, as of today, doesn't look like they have a juggernaut QB. Now, we don't know what I have my reservations about Caleb Williams being in LA, seeing it.
Jordan Love could take another step. There's potentials for sure.
and he for sure took another. He improved, but I don't know if I'm ready to really say he. I feel like Stroud flashed way more than Jordan Love ever did in his career. So, I mean, I need to see more out of Love before I'm ready to put him there. But follow-up question on Ryan Poles. So he gets a lot of praise for deferring on Bryce Young, but our site's founder, RC Fisher, who's like the scout that runs FF Metrics, provides all the projections, whatnot, he always has the counter argument that he blames Poles for deferring on CJ Stroud because they could have had their franchise QB right there.
They could have had their franchise QB right there. Instead, they have right tackle with effort issues and DJ Moore.
Yeah.
The 19th best receiver. I do think they fumbled that one a little bit, but they chose the right team to trade it to, I guess. So they get their number one pick again, and now they get Caleb Williams, and good for them. My concern with the Bears is that I still think they could have done more to set up a nurturing environment for Caleb Williams. Yeah, they've got Keenan Allen now. That helps a lot. But their offensive line is still – I need to see something more. I would really like to see them take a tackle or even take like that really good center out of Oregon early in the draft. And even if that means taking pick 9 and trading down a little bit and then taking it so the value works out a little bit better. If I were a Bears fan, that's what I would really want. I want to put Caleb Williams behind a good offensive line so that he doesn't have to feel like he has to play hero ball all day. And so he can sort of nurture the part of his game that isn't hero ball. Because the hero ball Caleb Williams game is all anyone ever talks about. But it's that drop back game, which I do think is underrated. It should be discussed more. It's pretty good. But that's where you want him to live. And you want the hero ball to be something he only takes out when he needs rather than something he feels like he has to take out every play, which is exactly what happened to Justin Fields. So like, I'm nervous. If I'm a Bears fan, I'm looking at what happened with Justin Fields and I'm going, please God, history, please don't repeat itself.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So I guess bottom line for you, do you think that like the Lions are going to be serious Super Bowl contenders again? As a Vikings fan, like, do you think that these guys could actually get it? Because to be honest with you, I think they were pretty damn close. I mean, again, like you just go back to that, that NFC Championship game. They were right there, and I think that if they won that game, they stack up with the Chiefs really damn well. Like they could have easily pulled away with that. So, my question to you: was this a one-hit wonder? With, I guess you could say the Lions and Packers. Packers are right there too. Or do you think
Packers were 9-8. They won the stupid Dallas. They got to the dumb Dallas wild card thing, and then they went into San Francisco. But they had San Francisco on the ropes too. I guess I'll take those teams one at a time. I don't see why not with the Lions. I'm a Vikings fan. I'm going to be rooting against them hard, but I can also still be objective. They've got Jared Goff playing the best ball he's ever played. They've got a crazy run game. They're good in the trenches, right? Like they're hot up front. And that will carry you very far. That will make everybody else's life a little bit easier. The thing that is working against them is that it's just hard to do it again, right? Yeah. It's irresponsible to look at the teams in the NFC Championship last year and assume those will be the same teams. That never happens. You know, I mean, this time last year, we're going, of course, the Eagles will win the NFC again. Well, they fell off. Like, it happens, right? So keeping that together is something important. But I think what really got the Lions is just inexperience in youth. Those guys just hadn't really been there. And they hadn't been on the road with a big lead, Super Bowl on the line, and then they choked it away. And that's just what's going to happen when you're relying on your players. And, you know, the guy with the most experience there is Goff. Mm-hmm. And he's had similar moments like that before, but I don't even think, if I recall, I don't think Goff had that bad a game anyways.
He played decent.
Yeah, I thought he played well, right? It's fuzzy, but that defense hadn't been in that. It's different when you're there. When you've got a 3-score lead in the NFC Championship game and it's in your grasp, the emotion of it is different. The way you play is different. I think they got to thinking. And that can get in your head, right? You start thinking, you stop playing, and then suddenly, you know, they make one adjustment on you and you're cooked. And that stupid like tip touchdown, like there was some flukiness to it as well. But that's part of it, right? It's single elimination. Sometimes you get unlucky, and nothing's stopping them from getting unlucky again, just like everybody else. We all start 0-0, but I don't see why you know, they shouldn't be like a top 3 team in the NFC, right?
Yeah.
As for the Packers, my concern is consistency. They won 9 games off the back of Jordan Love. They lost 8 games off the back of Jordan Love. He had his stinkers, right? We saw some of them in prime time against the Raiders, against the Giants. You can't have a dude that throws 3 interceptions in a game a bunch of times. Like you can't have that. So for Jordan Love, if I'm the Packers, if I'm Matt LaFleur, if I'm I don't know who his quarterback's coach is, but if I'm that guy, right? My goal here is, can you get me 4 or 5 games in a row where you're that dude, where you're the dude you were against the Vikings on Sunday Night Football on I think New Year's Day. That was what we want from Jordan Love, right? And can we get that over and over and over again? Because to win the Super Bowl, you need to win 4 games in a row, right?
Yep.
You need to win 4 games in the playoffs, or maybe it's 3 games in a row. But if you're going to get that 1 seed, you probably had to win 4 games in a row at some point. So you need to be able to string those games together and make it routine, right? Do everything well every single time and show me that consistency. The guy that falls apart, twice a month, you can't have that. That's not enough. So that's the next step for Jordan Love. If you start seeing him rattle off 8 really good games in a row and the Packers go on a win streak, bam, he's that dude. But we've seen a lot of guys with high highs and low lows, and they never make it. They never last in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Next question, I think is gonna hit. It's gonna be a little more emotional for you. I think for all Vikings fans. What do you want to do with Justin Jefferson? So like, he obviously is going to command a huge contract, probably in excess of $30 million a year. It's better for your rookie to have him than not, because it could help him grow. But I do realize that tying up your cap, we were talking about, hey, the optimal time to win is when you're not paying your QB, but it's like you're going to give QB money to Justin Jefferson instead of spreading it around your whole team. How do you feel about him? And would you even potentially entertain a trade for him to like Arizona for 4th overall straight up? Because Arizona's in line to draft a wide receiver, right? Like, why wouldn't they want Justin Jefferson, who they know is a surefire thing, as opposed to taking a chance on Marvin Harrison Jr.?
So here's the funny thing about those kinds of trade proposals. Yeah, why wouldn't the Cardinals love that? Boy, they would love that. They would love that so much that it would be a crazy fleece on the Vikings. Why would the Vikings do that? That's it. Always funny when I see people who, and it never comes from Vikings people, because all the Vikings people want to keep Justin Jefferson. The answer to your question is, of course you pay him. It's not even a question. And the Vikings have already agreed to do that. And the holdup last year was in the details. They were very, very close to just getting that done last year. But that would have been early to do it. CeeDee Lamb, he'll probably get extended this summer around the same time Justin Jefferson does. All those 2020 guys, unless they're quarterbacks, if you're like a successful 2020 draft pick, you get extended this summer. That's kind of the normal timeline. So they'll probably do it there. But it's kind of funny because you say it's QB money. I don't think that's QB money anymore, man.
Yeah,
35 mil?
Baker Mayfield money.
Yeah, that's Baker. That does not get. That's like provisional QB money. And that's 30 mil, and I don't think he sees all of it, right? If you really want to talk about QB money, what's Tua going to make this year, right? It's gonna get toward 50, and because of the way that the cap has exploded, our sense for what a lot of money is blown out the door. Our brains just aren't really wired to adjust our sense of scale as quickly as the scale has changed. So right now, I mean, look, 5 years ago, if your QB was making 25 mil, like, that was a lot. Or if it was 2018, Kirk Cousins signed a contract infamously that was $84 million over 3 years, right? Oh, he's an $84 million quarterback. That wasn't even 30. And that was 6 years ago. And now if you got Kirk Cousins for less than 30, you'd feel like you were stealing. Yeah. Cousins is making 45 mil a year.
Yeah.
Jefferson's
100
not
mil
making
guaranteed.
45 mil a year.
And he's off an Achilles.
Yeah, right. So you talk about guys like Tua, guys like Herbert or whatever, like those guys are going to make the bag. Or Herbert already got his deal, but I don't think you can say it's QB money anymore. This is just what wide receivers make. Tyreek Hill made like 31. I think Justin Jefferson will beat that by a good bit. And then the real holdup was in guarantee structure, which is just like this super minutia. They would have worked it out, but then the season started and everybody's got something else to focus on. So we're gonna table this. It's basically what happened. There is no indication at all that any kind of trade has even been entertained, let alone discussed or gone deep at all.
Yeah.
So that's probably just like a kind of a fantasy-ish pipe dream. You can go ahead and trade Justin Jefferson in your fantasy league all you want, but that's not really where the Vikings' heads are at. And on the contrary, they've actually been including him in discussions about the quarterback and keeping him abreast of like, this is who we like, this is who's going to be talking to you. You know, they understand that he's the superstar and that he is the guy that we are building around. And they're bringing him further in, and then the extension is just not the thing on everybody's desk right now because you know we got a draft coming up. The whole front office is a little busy, not to mention with that. And then they were trying to figure out with Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter and getting those situations and free agency. They've had tighter deadlines to deal with, so Justin Jefferson will be on the back burner until the summer, which is when kind of when you designate to do all that work. And then that'll happen and he'll get his extension and hopefully everybody can shut up about it. But yeah, the reason you wouldn't trade Justin Jefferson to Arizona for 4 is because that'd be a pretty bad deal for the Vikings. I think that would be him.
So you'd reject that deal if you were the GM. You would reject
and
that
I would
deal.
Never call back. I would be insulted.
Wow. All right. I love it,
for
man.
4? Are you kidding me? For 4? Get out of
here. Hey,
part of the deal.
But you were going to offer a bunch of first rounders to get up there. So it's like you're getting up there and you get to keep your 11 and your 20, like
I'll give you all the dice rolls that you want because that's what that draft picks are. You can have the probabilistic assets, right?
Yeah.
You can have all the Lewis Scenes and Garrett Bradburys that you want, but you can't have the guy that's the sure thing. That's why the players
are blue chip player.
Yeah, blue chip. Justin. There's no risk with Justin Jefferson outside of the background underlying risk that every player has because anybody can get hurt. But there is no. Justin Jefferson is a dog. He's a superstar. If I were to try to trade Justin Jefferson away and then say, yeah, but now we've got pick 11 and 23, we can maybe get we could get Brian Thomas out of LSU. I'm not going to put the same expectations on that. I just got a lot worse. And I got a lot worse in a way that deeply affects the quarterback I just traded for. Part of the reason the Vikings are so motivated right now and are so willing to give up all these draft picks is because of Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson whenever he's healthy and when he comes back. And they've got bookend tackles, a line they feel pretty good about. This is a great, quarterback friendly a former QB as a head coach. This is a place very much set up to nurture a young quarterback. And to trade Justin Jefferson away undermines the entire point of what you're doing. You don't want a quarterback as bad anymore. Where are we going here?
Look, those draft picks are nice, but I do agree that Justin Jefferson, if you're going to nurture a young QB, what better way to do that than pairing him up with, in my eyes, the best receiver in the league? Like, what can you do better than that? So, but I want to get onto Kirk Cousins now because you mentioned, your offense is designed for a QB head coach, all those weapons you discussed. Kirk Cousins at the end of in the middle of the year, before he got injured, I felt like he was playing his best ball that I've ever seen him play, maybe in his career, definitely in a Vikings uniform. Like 2023 Kirk pre-injury, that was something to watch, man. And it just sucks that he had that injury because God knows what your ceiling would have been this year. Even last year, the NFC was wide open.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he was on such a high. But if I know anything about Kirk, it's that it never lasts. He has his highs. He has his hot streaks. He has his cold streaks. He's a streaky quarterback. He was in Washington. He was for all 6 years in Minnesota. He's streaky. From a fantasy angle, the steadiest Eddie of all time. He will always be good for 200-300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. But in terms of his game management is what I'll call it. But a lot of it is the dude never really had a scramble drill. And in the modern NFL, a scramble drill is a vital thing that a quarterback must have. Now, could he Sometimes he would, get out. There are a couple of highlights I'm sure people can go clip at me of him like running out and actually getting like a scramble touchdown or whatever. But he did not have a consistent, I'm out of the pocket, I'm throwing on the run in the same way to see somebody like Dak Prescott have. Dak Prescott might have my favorite scramble drill in the league right now. It's so clean. It's always really tight and concise. I love the way that he improvises when things go down. But Cousins' deal was always that he was a little bit more susceptible to when the play started breaking down. He could find it sometimes, but it was really inconsistent. And sometimes he would be on it, right? He would be, zinging these over the middle. He'd be throwing on the run. He'd be improvising. He'd be working the pocket. And in those games, he seemed unstoppable. He seemed like a genuine top 5 quarterback. There was a time in 2022 after a game when I was like, if he gives me 17 like that, that's a Super Bowl season, right? But you never get 17 like that. You always get like 5 or 6 like that. And then you get 5 or 6 where he totally falls apart. And you get a couple where he, just gets like hyper conservative and super tightly wound, and he rushes through his process and he gets, through his progression too fast and doesn't like anything. And I had a whole meter about it on Twitter. It was like a running bit where I had the chaos meter.
Yeah. Like, I wish I saw 2022 Luke with B-Flow. I think B-Flow on that team, coaching that defense, that could have been interesting. You definitely would have gotten past the Giants.
I mean, right, yeah, you wouldn't have had one of the worst defensive meltdowns I've ever seen against the Giants, which is such a bummer for a team with such a storied defensive history. But that did kind of feel like it was just like coming. Like eventually someone's going to figure out how to score on every drive here. And they almost, like the Giants almost pitched a perfect game there. They got 2 stops that whole day. Disgusting.
Those 2 games against you guys, Danny Dimes made his contract. He should have sent your old DC a tip or something, man. Like,
yeah, Ed Donatel was an NFC East sleeper agent. I'm convinced.
Man,
but
what was that?
It's not good. But yeah, the nature of Kirk Cousins is inconsistency, and it's the same argument, and manifesting in a way different way. It's not like he's the same guy as Jordan Love, but it's the same argument of you can never get 4 in a row out of this guy. 6 years, 1 playoff win, a lot of 500 seasons, and everybody who signed him and extended him and really bought into him is fired now.
Right.
Nobody who believed in Kirk Cousins still has their job with the Vikings. I think that tells you everything.
That's a really good point. It sounds like you're okay with the move. You agree with the move to move on. Okay.
It was time, not only because he's getting old and because I was never the biggest Kirk guy. There were times when I was like super in. There were times when I was super out. But also because it was just a good time to do it. And it seemed like this was the plan. When Kwesi got here in 2022, he signed Kirk to another 1-year extension, in part because that contract kind of forced him to. Cousins had a $45 million guaranteed cap hit in 2022 money, which was untenable. So they had to do something. They could have found a way to cut him. They could have found a way they actually could have taken that cap hit if they really wanted to be crazy about it. But they decided to kind of get another year, spread things out, make everything reasonable, and say, we got a 2-year window with Kirk. And if it doesn't happen, we let him walk. And they never really blinked off of that. So this was the plan. The injury made it a little easier to make that decision, right? If he had, won the division twice in a row with those 2 years, you might have been tempted to say, hey, let's, keep running this back and see if we can't make something happen in the playoffs. But really, it was 2 years of Kirk. Let's see if we can't make this roll. And you had one defensive meltdown, and then you had 2023 where he got hurt. And you go, you know what? Time to move on. Now we get to see the team that Kwesi actually wants to build instead of seeing him try to make it work with the team that he inherited.
Is this year 3 for Kwesi or year 2?
Yeah, year 3. Year 2 was him trying to make it work with a Rick team. Now there's like nobody left from the Rick era. I think it's like Harrison Smith and a couple of people that they chose to extend.
Yeah, legendary Vikings players right there. So let me ask you this: for Kwesi and KOC, let's say they trade up, they get JJ McCarthy, and he just, Sam Darnold starts the season, you put JJ in, and he's not it. It's not working. You guys spent all this draft pick. Is this a make or break year for both these guys? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, do you think they need to nail this to keep their jobs, or do they have a long, like, how long is their rope here?
I don't think the seat is hot, if that's what you're asking. I think we're pretty far away from that. But it's interesting with GMs because it might ultimately be this is the year that will define Kwesi's tenure. I'll give you that much. But with GMs, the actual action of firing them over this is going to take 2 or 3 years to happen. You rarely get to a point with a GM is such a longitudinal thing. This is a long-term outlook thing. When you fire a GM, you don't do it because of what happened just last year. If you do, you're a trash franchise. And there are trash franchises that do that all the time, and it never works out. Yeah, Panthers, the Browns for a long time before Andrew Berry. They've got at least something going on now, but when they were just cycling through GMs, the Jets, these are not the franchises you want to emulate, and they are reactive about it. They go, that season wasn't good enough, we're firing the GM. But really, how good you are this year is a reflection of the decisions your GM made 2 or 3 years ago. So this might be the thing. I mean, if you look at the thing that got Rick Spielman fired was when he extended Kirk Cousins in 2020, but he didn't get fired until 2022. It took a couple years for that to manifest, for us to see the results of it and then be able to make the decision. So yeah, 2020 was a make or break year for Rick Spielman, but we just did it out for a while. Mm-hmm. So if this does go up in smoke, I do think that it would ultimately lead to them cleaning house and finding a new regime, but that won't happen until 2026.
So that's the GM, but what about what if KOC leads the Vikings to a 4-win season?
You'd have to really say that it's his fault and his fault specifically. Okay. I don't think the expectations on the Vikings are that high because you have a rookie QB. So if you do have a 4-win season, you're going, okay, but the QB was a rookie. Let's give him an off season. Let's, chill out. Let's see if he takes that second-year leap. A lot of people do. You probably have that whole narrative saying, okay, but can they make the leap, right? Hey, look, Jordan Love's in year 4, right? Give the kid a little bit of time. I can't stand how impatient we are with draft picks nowadays. Mm-hmm. Where look at the way people talk about Bryce Young. Bryce Young had nothing going for him in Carolina. He wasn't. He had his own flaws, right? He had some of the flaws he took from Alabama, but he had Adam Thielen's corpse and no one else to throw to. Terrible offensive line, offensive structure that was so bad, dudes were getting fired mid-season. There is no world in which we should look at this as the definitive death of Bryce Young. He could absolutely come back next year with a little bit more of a competent approach and be better. But a lot of people have already written their book on him, and they're ready to say, no, Bryce Young sucks. I'm done with him. And even if he comes out and plays better, they won't admit it until they see him, win playoff games or something. I think it's horrible.
We were on, our site was sort of pounding the table, take CJ Stroud, take Anthony Richardson this time last year. So I don't want to sit here and act like I'm a Bryce Young loyalist when I'm about to say this, but he has nowhere to go but up. I mean, that was the worst situation you could have possibly thrown your QB to. Now, will he be an all-pro NFL QB? I think we've seen enough to say that's probably unlikely, but could he be a low end or maybe above average starter one day? Yeah, you don't know that. I can't definitively say no to that, but I don't think that I can see him as a dynamic playmaker. I think I saw that. Let me ask you this: if you threw CJ Stroud into that offense, do you think that obviously he's not going to look as good as he did with the Texans, but the Texans also didn't have a really great offensive situation last year too? CJ Stroud lifted him up. So do you think Panthers would look as bad with CJ Stroud?
I do think Stroud would be better because Stroud overcame this rookie thing. We didn't have to be patient with him.
Yeah.
But he struggled week 3, week 4, and people were ready to be like, wow,
he lost to the Panthers.
Maybe that S2 test. People were ready to declare it.
Yeah.
What are you doing? This dude's been in cell for 9 seconds. Chill.
Yeah.
Give him a second to breathe.
Yeah. And put the right now, Panthers got Dave Canales too from Tampa, who was Baker Mayfield's whisper. He had a great season with it. Now you have the idea going, right? So let's see what happens.
And maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe Dave Canales isn't the guy. I kind of think that's who they could have gotten because it's so bad in Carolina. They don't really get access to the good candidates.
Absolutely.
And maybe by year 2, year 3, But I think by year 1, I don't think you can make any sweeping I haven't been out there going, wow, look how bad. Bryce Young's such a disaster. That season was a disaster. Yeah. You can have disaster rookie years and still pull it out. That's absolutely a thing that happens all the time to people. Chill out.
They're trying. They paid 2 guards a ton of money to come in there. I don't know if you saw like $100 million going to, I think, Miami's guard. And then they grabbed another one too. So they're trying to bolster
trying to
the line.
protect him.
We'll see what happens. But let's talk. Let's shift gears back to the Vikings. Like what move you guys made in the during free agency really excited you? Was there anything that you're like, oh, this is smart. I love this.
I think the defining thing of this offseason will be whatever gets them their QB. So I don't know if we know the answer to that question yet. But if we're just talking about stuff that's happened so far in free agency, I think my favorite pickup is Andrew Van Ginkel. Especially for the money he has. And being able to go turn on his tape. That dude can play. That dude's a baller, man.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does he have the versatility, and that's what they really wanted, and the familiarity with Flores. He was there with, when he was drafted in Miami. But the way that he attacks is really relentless, really polished, and like there are some stuff that separates the men from the boys technique wise. I think in the NFL, some of the little things like getting your toe around when you want your inside toe to be around when you're pass rushing and you actually like rip past or you swim past, you get past the guy. Your toe will take you where you want to go. So if your inside toe is pointed at the quarterback. And you can, like, if your listeners want you, get up, try this, right? Point your inside toe a different way, and then just like take a step wherever your body naturally takes you. You'll feel your body take you around that way where you want it. And so that's a good habit to be in. Van Ginkel does that. He's got that proper inside toe. He's really good against the run, better than what you would think for a smaller player. Holds his water when he has to, holds his gap when he has to, penetrates when he has to. I really, really like that player. He was a rotational player in Miami because of, Jalen Phillips and what they had going on there. I do think that he can be an every down Swiss Army knife, really cool tool in Minnesota. I really like it.
I love that connection to Beeflo. I completely forgot that they, had time together in Miami. That's great.
Yeah.
I also, for me personally, I know that Grenard is a downgrade from Hunter. Obviously, Hunter's really good, but for bang for your buck, if we're just looking at this from a Moneyball perspective, the amount of money that you're paying Grenard versus Hunter, I think that was just a downgrade there. I kind of like that just from how much cap you're saving from that move.
So I think I'm on the opposite side of that. They save about $5 million a year. I think Danielle Hunter is more than $5 million better. But part of that is age too. Danielle Hunter is going to go into his 30s. He's going into like his 10th year in the league too, so there's a lot of wear and tear. So part of that is, Danielle Hunter's on a 2-year deal. Grenard is on a 4-year deal, and they wanted to do that. But I think that the Vikings just don't value Danielle Hunter as high as you would, as I do. And I just disagree with them over that, which is fair, right? Like I'm not sitting here thinking that they're idiots or anything like that. I just have a different opinion there.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, let's get into the part of the show that I'm most excited about. I wanted to get your take. If you were sitting there as the GM, it's draft day, you have pick 11, what's Luke going to do? Are you sitting still? Are you trading up? And if you're trading up, who are you going for?
So I'm trading up for sure. Oh my God, I'm forcing the issue. And I'm going in. So I'll emulate my inner Kwesi here because I think I think I understand his approach, and I think it's really smart. Because when you trade up, it's not like when you do an add-in or when you do it, in a mock draft simulator. You call everybody. I just did so on the Locked On Podcast Network, we have an annual mock draft where I do Vikings. All 32 Locked On hosts get together and do a mock draft together with trades. And when I did that, I didn't just call the Patriots. Right? I didn't just call the Cardinals. I called everybody. I called the Commanders, and actually almost got something really cool done with the Commanders stuff. That would have been really fun. I won't tell you. I won't say exactly what happened, but I called the Patriots. I called the Cardinals. I called the Chargers. I talked to the Giants. I talked to the Titans. I wanted one of them, right? And then you start pitting them against each other, and you start to say, okay, well, the Cardinals will let us go up for 11 and 23 and a third rounder next year. So we'll take that. But Chargers, if you want to let us come up for just 11 and 23, maybe we'll do that. And maybe you can eke a little bit of value out that way. Ideal world, if I got control over everything and I could force trades, I would go up to 3 with New England and it'll probably be Drake May, but if it's Jaden Daniels, I'm still doing backflips. I'll take the quarterback that's there at 3. If they end up going to 4 and they take JJ McCarthy, I'm pretty happy with that. I like JJ McCarthy. I don't like him as much as I like May, but there are people in the league that do like JJ McCarthy more than Drake May, and that might be a stunner to some people that just are going off of like public perception. Like that does not match public perception. But if you get into the nitty gritty of the quarterbacks, there is a moment to be made there. It's not one that I would really support, but at least I can understand it. And I think if you walk away with May or maybe Daniels, but I don't think so. I think Commanders just take him, or JJ McCarthy, I'm happy. And here's the thing. Brandon Beane said it really well when he was talking about trading up for Josh Allen. It doesn't matter if you have to spend 3 first-round picks to get up, maybe even a 4th and you get like a 3rd or a 2nd or something back. It does not matter. Because if JJ McCarthy works out, it's not going to matter what you spent. If you got your quarterback, the extra first rounder in 3 years, nobody's going to care. You got your quarterback. It worked, right? It's going to way outweigh that. And there's actually an analytic argument to be made. There's a guy in the Vikings world that did this study, Skull Analytics. I love what he does. And he actually looked at this and said, if you just look at like wins above replacement, like the PFF version of that metric, a quarterback will be worth 20 times, like an elite quarterback will be worth 20 times what an elite position player is. So you could trade 20 first-round picks and still be getting a decent deal, right? If you get, you would trade 20 first-round picks for Patrick Mahomes, you'd be getting a good deal. You could make a Super Bowl team out of that, right?
Man, that logic is pretty insane. I would have to take a minute to digest that because that seems crazy. But I do agree that like someone like Justin Jefferson, for example, right? Let's go back to your win total at 6.5. Pull him off your team. Where's your win total going? 5.5, 4.5? Like without Justin Jefferson on your team. But you add somebody that like
right.
You add a real quarterback. Let's say, I don't know, you got the creme de la creme quarterback. You add Patrick Mahomes to your team, 6.5 probably doubles, right?
Yeah, totally. Right. That's the kind of expectation that you have. And Vegas will actually provide pretty useful data for that because of the wisdom of crowds, I guess. But yeah, with Justin Jefferson, he's probably worth a win or two. But the real value of having him in the building is the impact that he has on the development of the quarterback. The fact that he gives you a higher probability of a JJ McCarthy working out, which means trading him to get up won't be worth it. It will not increase your odds of winning a Super Bowl. So for me, I'll give up that 2025 first. I'll give up that 2026 first. I don't care. I'm insane. Let's do some bath salts and get a trade done. I am moving up. I'm moving heaven and earth to do it.
So in your ideal world, would you rather trade more with the Commanders to secure May, because it sounds like May's your guy, or trade a little bit less with New England to get Jaden in that scenario, or not have May? Like it sounds like you're almost like you prefer May.
I actually like Jaden Daniels more than May. It just really sounds like the Commanders are going to take Jaden Daniels, so I think that it's pie in the sky. Okay. But I actually do like Daniels. I would still I like both of them a decent amount. That's actually kind of a hard question because I do think the differences between quarterbacks, because of how warped that scale is, it's like worth considering. But another interesting thing about trading up is depending on who you're talking to, it might not be more expensive to go up, to 4 than it is to go to 5, because the Chargers might just like play hardball with you a little bit more than the Cardinals want to. Like that was something that I kind of found out when I was calling all my other fellow Locked On hosts. These are different people with different ideas of what a draft pick is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes you can manipulate that. But I think 3 is the sweet spot there. I'll take whichever one the Commanders don't want. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And then I guess for 4, you definitely want a discount because then now you're, if you have JJ McCarthy there, like that, you probably don't want to give up more than your 11 and 23, I think it is, or 27.
And change, I would say. I think if you're giving up 3 to move up to 4, you probably got out negotiated. And I do think that is grossly overpaying for what JJ McCarthy is. But again, I do not care about grossly overpaying because.
So you would do it. You would still do it. 3 first-rounders to get up to 4 to get JJ. And sorry to throw specifics at you. I'm just trying to gauge.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
You're pushing my line, but I think I would have to. I don't think I would have a choice. I think if it came to that, nope. Cardinals are on the clock. 3 first-rounders, or we hang up. Well, But maybe you wouldn't have to, actually, now that I think about it, because it's 3 first-rounders or we pick. So I'm just going to call the Chargers. And go up with them. And then maybe I don't have to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, take Marvin Harrison Jr. and miss out on all my picks. I'm sure the Chargers will be happy to hear that. The only problem is it can't get to the Giants, because I think the Giants take them if it gets to 6.
Interesting.
Okay. I'm pitting the Cardinals and the Chargers against them. And I think if you manage this situation well, you don't have to pay 3 first-round picks, because the cliff between the top 3 quarterbacks and then the 4th one is steep enough where I don't think you need to do it to make it happen. But we will see. I could be totally wrong about that. And honestly, if it turned out that the Vikings traded 3 first-round picks to get up to 4 and took JJ McCarthy, because of what they did with the Texans, that means that they only are missing their first-round pick for 1 year. I'm okay with that. I think that can work. You miss your first-round pick for a year. You take your lumps. By 2026, you're back to normal draft classes. JJ McCarthy's in his 3rd year, and we ride. And we'll see where this takes us. And by that moment, it's not going to matter what you spent. It just matters how good JJ McCarthy is. So if they're right about him, and they are really in love with him, I think I'm on pretty safe ground saying that. They really, really like JJ McCarthy. So if they're right about that, yeah, that first rounder in 25, we're not going to miss it.
If JJ McCarthy is KOC's guy, then I think 3 first-rounders, you go for it, man. Like, you get
it's the last thing you're worried about. Yeah. And from what I understand, and from what you can kind of surmise, they hired his high school coach. Drake May is their guy. Like, we can, again, safe ground, I think. But I don't think that JJ McCarthy is too far behind, in their opinion. I guess that would be my read on the situation.
Very cool. Yeah, that's good stuff right there, Luke. I hope that you guys, like, turn things around. I mean, not to say turn things around, or just find the right solution at QB, because for the longest time that I could remember, it feels like the Vikings have always had a Band-Aid solution at QB. Like, even when
since Tarkenton. Yeah.
Right?
It's always been your 1990s Jim McMahons, your Warren Moons, go all the way to your weird Favre years and stuff. Yeah, it's been a nightmare. If you want, you can go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL and find a 7-hour, 7-part history series, a documentary series on the entire history of the Minnesota Vikings. It's 7 episodes long, each one average an hour. And you can go enjoy the entire history of a storied team with lots of heartbreak and lots of very good characters.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, dude, I'm just thinking about it. Like, all the first-round QBs that you guys have had, like Ponder, Bridgewater. I'm not trying to bring up bad memories, but like, it's
Can you name all 4?
Oh, I mean, I'm not a Vikings fan. I have a lot of friends that are Vikings fans, so
you already got 2.
Oh man,
it's tough, isn't it?
No, yeah, it's I don't think I can go back. Who are the other 2?
Tommy Kramer.
I would never get that.
Yeah, I'm actually like super blanking, but it's a funny one. It's not Fran Tarkenton. He was a 3rd rounder, which is pretty funny.
Was it anybody recently?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dante Culpepper. Yeah, that's.
So I was thinking like either Culpepper or Cunningham. I couldn't remember if you guys drafted one of them, but okay, yeah.
We did draft Culpepper. No, Cunningham joined when he was old. He was an Eagle for forever.
Yeah. There you go. My history before 2000 isn't that great, but So I mean, I'm just thinking about like just more recently, like it just feels like when you guys are good, you have like a Case Keenum out of nowhere, or Brett Favre, or Kirk Cousins.
It's always a weird one-off lightning in a bottle situation. Let's build something sustainable.
So it's going to be cool to just see, like, hopefully you guys can see a QB through, because I think Teddy Bridgewater at one point, like he was showing some promise, and obviously he had that crazy injury that just kind of like derailed his career. But yeah, I want to see like somebody like stick with you guys for like. I'm a Falcons fan, so like I saw Matt Ryan for 20 years, like just seeing it grow, mature, or whatever. Like that was awesome to see.
Have him be the guy forever and never be questioned at it. Yeah, that would be comforting.
I was the first one to rush him out the door because like he was really tanking in like 2020, 2021. Like I was like, hey, look, it's time. Let's try Mariota. And I can't regret that like take any more than I possibly could after seeing Mariota and like that was disgusting.
Did you see him in Indy though?
Oh man, I mean, yeah,
it was time. Look, hey, guys, get watched.
It was time.
It was time.
It was time. But I think what I regret about it is just not having that consistency at quarterback. Like it hurts, man.
Yeah, but time comes for us all. So you were going to be in this spot one way or another. Yeah. That's the way I feel about Kirk Cousins. If he goes to Atlanta and balls out and y'all win, 13, 14 games, more power to you. That's great. It's not right for us. It's time.
Yeah, I think in that situation, like it just seems like the right thing to do for both sides because you have Atlanta who has the offensive line. They have some weapons. I don't know how much you want to scale up with the Vikings, like how much you want to pick and choose Justin Jefferson, Drake London, or Hawk, Pitts, whatever. I think the bottom line is they're both good offenses with good offensive coordinators that actually they both came from McVay. So that part's interesting with Zach Robinson and KOC. So I think there's some hope there. I just don't know that Cousins can go all the way to the Super Bowl, but winning the division is definitely in play for the Falcons.
Definitely. Yeah. That division for sure. Yeah. Unless you see a big step out of Bryce Young or I don't know, the more Baker sanity. Yeah,
definitely. But Luke, I mean, you're amazing. You brought the heat today. I appreciate everything you brought to the table. And I think our viewers got a nice inside look on the Vikings, got some insights with some of the stuff you're saying. So like that's something we're going to take home, digest, just like our outlook on fantasy and the Vikings in general. But this was awesome, man. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, good times, man.